Hola amigos, buenos días. Hoy día vamos a aprender sobre los verbos. We're going to focus on verbs that end with ER and IR. So, before we jump into some new verbs, I thought it would be really helpful if we review what we've already learned about how to conjugate AR verbs. Fun fact, AR verbs make up the largest category of regular verbs in Spanish. And I am a fan of regular verbs because those exceptions, just like we have exceptions to all of our rules for grammar and language in English, there are lots of exceptions in Spanish. So I like it when things just follow the same algorithm every time. And there's a whole bunch of AR verbs that follow these rules. So to review, how do we find the stem of an AR verb? Well, all we do is we take the verb, and we'll take one of my favorites, hablar, because I love to talk. Hablar. We take the verb, and to get to the stem, all we're going to do is take off the AR. Boom. That's our stem. Okay. Once we have our stem, then we can add on the endings depending on what our subject is. So if I wanted to say, I speak, I talk, then I'd be conjugating my verb for the yo form. And so I would take my stem, and then I would add my ending. The ending for yo is o, right? If I wanted to talk about you talk, tú, then instead of adding an O, I would add an AS. And instead of hablo, I would have hablas. If I wanted to say he talks, she talks, you talk, talking in a formal, for él, ella, usted, then I would just add an A. And instead of hablo or hablas, I would have habla, él, ella, usted, habla. If I want to say we talk, talking about nosotros, nosotras. Nosotros, nosotras. Then our ending is amos. So we would say hablamos, we talk. And last but not least, I've run out of space, but if we were to say they talk, ellos, ellas, or y'all, ustedes, then we would add the ending hablan. We'd have that an, and we would have hablan. Those are the regular endings for AR verbs. So let's do a little bit of practice. Get this to go away. Okay. So just like I just discussed for the verb hablar, we've got hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, hablan. There's our endings. O, as, a, amos, an. How about you pause this, and I want you to try and conjugate these three verbs, tomar, trabajar, and viajar. Pause this, try and conjugate those verbs, those regular AR verbs, using the correct endings. Okay, hopefully you paused and tried it out. Here's what you should have come up with. If you were to conjugate tomar, which means to take or drink, trabajar, which means to work, or viajar, which means to travel, for the yo form, we'll have tomó, trabajó, viajó. And for the tú form, we'd have tomás, trabajas, viajas. For él, ella, usted, we'll have toma, trabaja, viaja. For nosotros, nosotras, we would have tomamos, trabajamos, viajamos. And for ellos, ellas, ustedes, we will have toman, trabajan, viajan. All right. I know you did well. Good job practicing. Now let's move on to our new knowledge, where we are focusing on verbs that end with ER and IR. If you remember the steps for how to conjugate AR verbs, then it's really not going to be too difficult when we transition to learning about these ER, IR verbs. Okay, here are some common or regular ER and IR verbs. We have aprender, to learn, barrer, to sweep, beber, to drink, comer, to eat, comprender, to understand, correr, to run, beber, to have or should. If you want to say somebody must do something, then you're going to use that verb deber. Leer, to read, meter, to put or insert, prender, to catch or turn on, romper, to break, temer, to fear or dread, toser, to cough, and vender, to sell. These are some ER verbs. They end with ER. That's why we're saying they're ER verbs. Some common regular IR verbs that end in IR, we have abrir, to open, añadir, to add, asistir, to attend, describir, to describe, discutir, to discuss, escribir, to write, interrumpir, to interrupt, ocurrir, to occur, partir, to leave, recibir, to receive, subir, to go up or to climb, sufrir, to suffer, and vivir, to live. Pay close attention to this verb asistir. Asistir means to attend. Okay, the verb atender does not mean to attend. This tripped me up a lot in high school. Okay, so ER and IR verbs follow the same pattern that we had with AR verbs. Slight tweak, okay? The O goes with yo, that's still the same. Instead of as going with to, we have es. Okay. Instead of a, we have an e, right? Got that a. And then we have hemos for the ER verbs, hemos for the IR verbs, and then en. But it's still a very similar algorithm that we're going to follow. Instead of o, as, a, amos, an for AR verbs, we have o, es, e, hemos, en. For ER verbs, the only distinction between ER and IR verb endings is where we're going to pay attention to, right, when we have nosotros, okay, we have EMOS for ER verbs and IMOS for IR verbs. Also, if we get into vosotros, that's different as well, but we don't typically use that. So let's do some practice. So how do we make the stem for an ER verb or an IR verb? Just like with AR verbs, we're going to just take off that ending, okay? So for the verb comer, which means to eat, to find my stem, I'm just going to take off the ER. There's my stem, com. For IR verbs, I'm just going to take off IR. Boom, there's my stem, vive, okay? Now that I have my stem, I'm going to add on those endings. So for the verb comer, I have my stem now, the com. If I want to say I eat, I would say yo como. You eat, tú comes. Add that es. He, she, you, formal, eat. Come. We eat. Comemos. Right? Oops, left that e on there. There we go. Comemos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes, comen. Same thing goes for IR verbs, right? Remember the big difference is where we have nosotros, nosotras, we're going to have an IMOS instead of an EMOS. But all of these other verb endings are the same. Yo, vivo, tú, vives, él, ella, usted, vive, nosotros, nosotras, vivimos, ellos, ellas, ustedes, viven. Okay? So let's finish with bang. Goodness, always tongue-tied. Let's finish with a bang. I want you to try these fill in the blank questions, okay? Número uno, María blank muchos libros. Change that verb leer so that it goes with María, right? If I wanted to replace María with a pronoun, then I would say ella. Ella, she, leer muchos libros. She reads many books. So what do? We are going to take off our ending. So we take off that ER. We've got our stem, le. And then we're going to add on the ending for él, ella, usted, which is another E. María lee muchos libros. Okay. Let's try another one. Yo blank en una casa grande. Right? And I've got this verb vivir, I live in a big house in my dreams. So I'm going to conjugate this verb. I'm going to take off my ending, put my stem, yo vive, and now I'm going to add on the correct ending that goes with yo, which is an O. Yo vivo en una casa grande. All right. If you have not tried these last two, try them. Click pause. And we're back. Hopefully you tried these out. I'm just going to give you the answers for these last two. Nosotras. We're going into, oops, daisies. I'm going to have to write it. Here we go. Nosotras escribimos. Vimos. We write. Right? Ellos beben. They drink water. And there we go. All done. How'd you do?